Chapter 12, Quite the Cousin. Not going to be able to fit it in, Caleb groaned. Pretty sure about that. We've got a test coming up next week and there's the passion project to keep working on. I just can't afford all that time away from my study schedule. Caleb was responding to an invitation to Asher's birthday party for the following Saturday afternoon and evening. Asher looked deflated. Oh, come on, Caleb. There's more to life than studying. All of our families are going to be there and lots of our friends. It will be great. But I've got to do well in school. So much in the future depends on it, Caleb responded, looking over to Blaze for support. They were all together around a table at Grace's place. Grace, Asher, Caleb, Blaze and Grace's mom, Alyssa. Grace's mother had encouraged her to invite them over to play a new virtual reality game. It had been a while since she had seen Caleb and she also wanted to meet Caleb's cousin, Blaze. The conversation had been great, and the snacks even better. Grace's mom was a great cook. Caleb regretted dampening the mood of their get-together with his turning down of the invitation but didn't see any way out. He was shocked by Blaze's response. Asher is absolutely right on this one, Caleb. There's way more to life than studying. Blaze began. But the future? Caleb blurted out, thinking that Blaze needed to remember what they all had to be working towards. As if Blaze wouldn't think about the future. The future is definitely coming, Caleb. But you can't let that destroy your enjoyment of life along the way. That's the whole point of the clever quick steps you've been learning about. They make you more effective with your study time so that you actually have more time for things you enjoy, like spending time with friends. But I've got several hours of study time scheduled on Saturday for test prep and project work, Caleb continued. So, you move it. I've seen your schedule. There's some flex time on Sunday afternoon that you can use for studying. And if you're really concerned, you could give up some of your downtime after school on Friday, just for this coming week, Blaze concluded. Oh, right, that was in the video. I can borrow from my study time, but not steal from it. If I can juggle things around, it's still all good. Thank you, Blaze, I wasn't thinking. Sorry, Asher, I would love to join your party. Excellent! Asher exclaimed, the family wants to see you again and is eager to meet Blaze. They've been hearing a lot about him. Momo, off the table. Grace suddenly shrieked, as her mother lunged forward to grab their rather large and rotund cat, just as he was about to join the fudge brownies on the platter in front of them. Caleb laughed. The brown icing would have made some interesting patterns on Momo's pure white, long-haired coat. Caleb thought about how fun it was getting together with friends, glancing around the table. They were all shocked when Blaze made the announcement about what was happening at school on Wednesday of the coming week. Apparently Blaze had been in touch with the school principal Ms. Lim, and their teacher, Mr. Badial. Blaze had made arrangements through a University of BC program to sit in on their classes as a requirement for a course he was taking. Shaking his head as he heard of the discussions that Blaze had had at the school, Caleb smiled and thought, oh, Blaze, how did you possibly get that sorted out? A program requirement for a class from 8 years into the future. Caleb laughed out loud, causing everyone to turn and look at him. Grace's face was the only one that reflected an understanding of what Caleb thought was so funny. A slight grin played on Blaze's lips as he glanced at Caleb before continuing to describe what Wednesday had in store for them all. Apparently Blaze was going to be teaching a sample lesson as part of his Scientists in Schools education program. The fact that the SSE program didn't exist until 8 years into the future seemed to be only a minor detail for Blaze. He said he had already made arrangements with Mr. Badial to lead a class on the E part of Clever Quick educational setting. Mr. Badial had been very keen to learn about the Clever Quick program. At that, Grace and Caleb looked at each other, slightly panicked at the thought of all the future references in the videos and program. In the midst of his explanation, Blaze turned to them and whispered, "There's another set of videos, don't worry." Just then, Grace's dad Steve arrived home from his job where he was overseeing a local construction site. "Whoa, Crowded house, he observed, stepping through the kitchen and picking up a can of soda before stopping to scoop up a pair of brownies. Nodding to Caleb and Asher, Steve leaned over, giving Grace a hug and Alyssa a kiss on the cheek. "Who's this?" Steve asked, gesturing toward Blaze. "This is Blaze, Caleb's cousin," Grace replied. "Cousin? Looks more like his brother, sure a lot of family resemblance. You two could be twins if you were the same age," Steve commented, looking from Caleb to Blaze and back again. Caleb could feel his face reddening under the scrutiny. "Well, nice to meet you," Steve continued, extending his hand. "I'm surprised we haven't met you before. We've known Caleb all his life. Didn't even know Caleb had a cousin." "I was thinking the same," Asher added. Everyone looked at Blaze. He seemed to be searching for something to say. "Not from around here then, are you?" Steve continued. "Not really, time-wise, no," Blaze responded, before directing the conversation elsewhere. Both Asher and Steve seemed to be about to say something but stopped when Blaze continued talking. "I'm really enjoying my visit with Caleb. And it's been great meeting you all. It's too bad I haven't been able to be around much before this," Blaze continued. "And actually, looking at the time, we should be getting on home, Caleb. Once again, great to meet you all." Later, walking home, Caleb learned that a revised set of videos had been made that didn't have all the future and personal references. Mateo actually put together 2 complete sets. "One for you folks, and one for everyone else," Blaze had explained. After continuing to walk for a bit, Caleb spoke up about a thought that was nagging at him. "So Blaze, this clever quick isn't just for us? We're not so special then?" "Oh, you're special all right. But we're up against a dangerous situation in the world. There's so much ignorance and lack of understanding. Well, that, along with actual lying and attempts to deceive. It's getting to the point where people don't know what to believe anymore. All learners need to be able to be effective in their learning and their ability to sort out truth from lies and falsehoods," Blaze exclaimed. "The future depends on truth being foremost. And for that to happen, every learner needs to be as sharp as they can be." The next few days went by quickly. Caleb focused on the arrival of Wednesday with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Finally, it was Wednesday. The most unique of days began with Blaze coming to school with him. It felt like everyone was watching them and Caleb was proud to show Blaze off. After checking in at the office and picking up the visitor's badge for Blaze, they headed to the classroom. There, Caleb felt something of a celebrity status as his friends and classmates took note of Blaze sitting at the back of the room. When Mr. Badial had introduced Blaze, everyone had been looking back and forth between Caleb and Blaze. Caleb felt very important, sitting up a little straighter than usual. Grace and Asher smiled at him in understanding as they noted the boost to Caleb's demeanor. Soon it was time for Blaze to give his lesson. He introduced the whole concept of clever quick, going into details about how to make the most of your educational setting, before turning on video A12. Grace, Asher, and Caleb all seemed rather proud to offer comments on several parts of the program. At Blaze's suggestion, they had watched video A12 the night before so they could be ready to make some comments to the class. They went all out in support of Blaze. Grace's most important contribution was a demonstration of the Cornell method of note-taking. She had been thrilled to learn about the strategy and had figured out right away how to use it to sort out main points and details. She was keen to share examples of how it could be used in the classroom. Caleb's demonstration centered on keeping an organized notebook. Grace had helped him set up his notebook the night before, and this was an opportunity to share it with the class. No one could believe it. He had his classmates, along with Mr. Badial, shaking their heads in disbelief at the transformation of his notebook materials. Next up was Asher, who reviewed the use of computer programs for independent study environments, stressing the safety aspects of going on the internet and video conferencing. Their classmates, along with Mr. Badial, were very impressed. Overall, the lesson went very well. The students seemed intrigued by the program and were keen to hear more. They were particularly thrilled to see their fellow students promoting the program. Mr. Badgel even expressed interest in having Blaze come back and teach the students more about Clever Quick. It was when Mr. Badgel directed the class into a question and answer session with Blaze that Caleb started to get a little nervous. It became quite the career talk, with lots of references to the type of preparation required for a career in teaching. At one point, Mr. Badgel had even looked around the classroom and remarked, "You know, add 8 years or so and this could be one of you up in front of my classroom." Panicked, Grace shot a glance at Caleb, who was sitting wide-eyed, not believing what he was hearing. The questions continued as the class wanted to know all sorts of personal details about Blaze. Caleb thought that perhaps Mr. Badgel would shut down the conversations at that point, but no, he didn't. He seemed equally intrigued by Blaze's responses to questions. All sounds stopped when Blaze referred to his favorite sports team. "I especially like the Vancouver Grizzlies. Of course, I've always liked following the NBA teams, and was thrilled when the team moved back from Memphis." Blaze seemed lost in thought and wasn't aware of the quiet that had descended on the room. The awkward silence continued for a moment after Blaze stopped talking. It was finally broken by Mr. Badgel's laughter. "Good one, Blaze. You really had us going for a moment there. Great sense of humor. A lot of folks would love to see the Grizzlies back in Vancouver. Quite the dream. That's brilliant." With that, the whole class erupted in laughter. Blaze looked confused. In a second though, he smiled and joined in the laughter. Caleb looked over at Grace. Only they had seemed to notice the pause before Blaze laughed. The only other odd happening from that day was Blaze's insistence on wanting to know all about the school classroom preparedness for earthquakes. He had quite the detailed discussion with Mr. Badgel, and they had subsequently pulled apart the classroom kit and listed everything that needed to be updated. "Quite the cousin you have there, Caleb," Mr. Badgel had noted. "He has volunteered to stay after school today and come in over the next few days to help us update all the earthquake preparedness materials for the whole school. I'm impressed with the emphasis on safety that the new UBC programs have." As they were leaving for the day, Grace made a crack about Caleb having to duck a little to step through the door into the hallway. He had never felt so important. Walking home alone, Caleb had time to think through the day. It had gone very well. He felt proud. One thought kept resurfacing though. Why is Blaze showing so much interest in preparing for earthquakes, I wonder? As he said it out loud, a sudden realization hit him like a shockwave. Of course. That must be it. The long-awaited West Coast earthquake must be on the way. As Caleb reflected on what seemed like the possibility of a major disaster, he thought about Blaze and the concern he had shown by getting the classroom ready. He was pretty sure that Blaze would do whatever it took to make sure they were safe. As Caleb continued on his way, he vowed not to ask Blaze about the earthquake or any other day-to-day details from the future.